This is Megan, and welcome to Stories in the Woods. Today's forest fact comes from Mackenzie.
Did you know that birds eat squirrels?
That's a great forest fact. Thanks for sharing, Mackenzie. I knew something must eat squirrels, but I didn't know that birds was one of its predators. Actually, that kind of reminds me of a story. Would you like to hear it? Okay, all you humans and forest dwellers, here we go. There was a crisp edge in the air today. Squirrel E could feel it in the slight wind that lifted her thickening fur. The trees had begun to shed their golden and vivid red leaves, and she watched as another let loose from the branch above her. It swayed in a gentle, lilting dance down to the ground below. Squirrel E loved this time of year. It felt cozy with her extra layers of fur for the cold winter months, and she rather liked how bushy and voluminous her tail was looking these days. She peered over her shoulder and gave it a small twitch, admiring the salt and pepper swish in the breeze. "What's that then?" a voice said nearby. Squirrel E peered around the base of the oak tree where she'd been collecting acorns. Another squirrel was looking at her questioningly. "Oh, no," Squirrel E laughed, rather embarrassed. "I was just, What had she been doing? Her cheeks grew warm and she twitched her tail again. "Just, letting everyone know it's all clear here. Yep, no birds or foxes or other large animals trying to get us. All clear, yep." The other squirrel gave her a look. "Sure. Listen, are you burying those acorns for later, or can I have them?" Squirrel E scooped her pile of nuts a little closer to her body. "Oh, sorry. I was just about to bury these before I got distracted by my checking for predators. Yep, because that's what I was doing." The other squirrel swished his tail in what was clearly meant to be an insult. Or maybe he was asking about an acorn recipe? Squirrel E wasn't always the best at reading other squirrels' tails. He scurried away up the thick trunk of the oak tree until she could no longer see him. Squirrel E looked down at her pile of nuts. She really did need to bury these and move on. It was no good dawdling as a squirrel. She hadn't been looking for predators, but they were around, and she should... Her ears pricked up. Wait, what was that noise? A dark shadow loomed above her, and she sensed that she needed to leave, and fast. Squirrel E sprinted to the oak tree that her fellow squirrel had just climbed up, but she felt a large body near her own, and sharp talons reached out. Squirrel E scrunched her eyes closed in fear and curled her tail around herself in protection. She felt a sharp tug and then... nothing. It grew quiet, and Squirrel E hurried up the tree trunk without even a glance at the large predator that had literally been on her tail. She leaped from branch to branch until she reached her home. Nestled in the crook of a tall maple was a large pile of leaves woven together with grass, twigs, and moss. She had lovingly gathered and laid each leaf, leaving a hollow cavity for her small squirrel body. She felt safe and comfortable inside. It was here that she finally stopped and drew in a shaky breath. Her heart was racing, and as she gathered her tail in her tiny paws, she was devastated to find that a chunk had been pulled away by the bird who'd been trying to make her supper. "Oh, Squirrel E," she chided herself. She often spoke to herself when she was stressed. Why do you always get so distracted? And by your tail this time? And now look at it. She tried to squish the fur around to hide the misshapen mess of her tail, but nothing looked quite right. She gave up and let out a long, frustrated sigh. Oh!
Squirrel E?
She could hear a muffled voice outside her nest. It was her friend Hickory, another gray squirrel that lived in the maple next to hers. She popped her head out of her nest and waved a little paw. Oh, hello, Hickory, she said.
Are you okay? You were moving so fast.
Hickory looked rather impressed. Yes, fine. Squirrel E felt embarrassed.
I'm out to get some food buried before the sun goes down. You know hickory nuts are my favorite, but I'm really craving some pine nuts today. I was watching the Tree Food Network the other day, and they had this.
Hickory chattered away, unaware that his friend was lost in thought. Squirrel E's mind drifted back to her tail. It was a mess, and she had almost let herself be scooped up by a predator. The last thing she wanted was to end up as the day's hot topic on the squirrel gossip line. She shivered as she thought of those sharp talons coming towards her.
Squirrel E?
She realized her friend had been talking for some time, but what she wasn't sure. Oh, what was that, Hickory?
Oh, I was just wondering if you wanted to join me.
Squirrel E was about to say yes. It was rare to collect with another squirrel, but from time to time her and Hickory would enjoy a pleasant scoop and scamper, choosing to bury their finds near one another to help unearth them later in the cold, dark winter months. But her mouth wouldn't cooperate today. Yeah. Hickory waited patiently. He knew sometimes his friend needed a bit of time before answering. No. Squirrel E hung her head. Her body felt tight and uncomfortable, and she just could not imagine leaving her safe nest again after the morning's events.
I can tell something is bothering you.
Hickory switched his tail in a kindly manner.
Why were you running before?
Squirrel E sighed. I got distracted by my tail this morning and didn't pay enough attention. A huge bird grabbed me, but his talons got tangled in my fur and it took a huge chunk out, and now look at it. And what if I get attacked again? And what if I can never leave my nest again? What if a tree branch falls on my nest right now and breaks it apart into a million pieces and...
Whoa.
Hickory waved his paws in front of Squirrel E.
Sounds like you were getting carried away by the what-ifs, Squirrel E.
The what-a-whats?
The what-ifs. What if this happens? What if that happens? Well, it hasn't happened yet. My mama squirrel always told me, Don't let the what-ifs take over, Hickory.
But how do I stop them? Hickory scooched a bit further down the branch so he was closer to Squirrel E.
Here's the trick my mama taught me. What-ifs can become a habit, so you have to train your brain. Close your eyes.
Squirrel E squeezed her eyes shut. She sure hoped Hickory knew what he was doing. He could have some funny ideas sometimes. Like the time he tried to put a tiny hot tub in his squirrel nest for the winter, and it ended up overflowing and making a big hole in the floor. Or the time he tried to turn himself into a flying squirrel with string and cloth he'd found, only to end up knotted and dangling from his nest by a paw. Squirrel E had spent an hour trying to help him down.
Imagine.
Hickory's voice interrupted her thoughts. Imagine you are out collecting nuts.
Can you see it, Squirrel E, in your mind?
Squirrel E squeezed her eyes shut even tighter and focused. Yes, she could imagine herself out. She'd found a nut. It's a big one. She picks it up and her heart beats faster with excitement.
Now, imagine you bury your nut. You found the perfect place for it.
Yes, she's burying the nut.
Now you scurry home and curl up in your nest. You've done it. You are home and you have a nut buried safe and sound for the cold months ahead.
Squirrel E felt a smile tug at her mouth and her body relax.
Okay, now open your eyes. How do you feel?
Hickory was eagerly watching her, a huge smile on his face. I feel good. Relaxed. Hickory clapped his tiny paws together. So what now? Squirrel E asked her friend.
Now we go hunt for food together and you practice, Squirrel E. Anytime the what ifs come for you, close your eyes and imagine something positive, something going well, the best possible thing, and tell yourself, I can do it.
Squirrel E took a deep breath. Her tiny paws flung out and she yelled, I can do it! Excuse me, chirped a voice further up the tree. Some of us are trying to have a rest. Please take your enthusiastic chattering somewhere else. Squirrel E shrugged sheepishly at her friend, and the two squirrels climbed down the tree head first to the ground below. They spent a lovely afternoon warmed by the autumn sun, collecting nuts and seeds. Squirrel E felt satisfied with her stash, but Hickory shook his head and crossed his arms.
No pine nuts, he pronounced. I don't want to go home without some pine nuts.
Squirrel E glanced at the sun that was sitting very low on the horizon. But Hickory, it's getting late. She was growing nervous. Dusk was a common hunting time for predators. Hickory waved her off.
You head home, Squirrel E. Go practice shaking off those what-ifs. I need my pine nuts.
And with that, he scampered off into the dimming light. Squirrel E watched her friend go, but her heart leaped as she noticed a large shadow ripple across the ground behind him. She felt frozen in fear, but she closed her eyes and imagined herself being brave. I can do it, she whispered to herself, and she let out a loud. Hickory heard her warning call and quickly leaped on to the closest tree, holding himself still. The large bird looked around, confused. He had lost the small rodent that was going to be his supper. He let out a frustrated cry and took off into the sky. Squirrel E rushed over to the tree where Hickory was hiding. Hickory, Hickory, she cried out. His head poked out from around the tree.
I'm here. Phew, that was a close one. I would have been bird dinner if it hadn't been for you, Squirrel E. Thank you.
The two friends quickly ran back to their neighboring trees, not wanting to take any more chances for the day. Each squirrel ran up the trunk to their cozy and safe homes nestled high in the branches. Squirrel E curled up inside, pulling her partially torn tail tightly around her body for warmth. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. I can do it, she whispered into the quiet night. As her eyes grew heavy with sleep. She felt exhausted from the day's events, but underneath the tired was a new warm feeling from the tips of her little squirrel ears to the bottom of her little squirrel paws. She smiled as she recognized the feeling. She was proud. I don't know about you, but the what ifs can really fill up my brain. In our story, Squirrel E was visualizing a positive experience to help her feel brave and relaxed. Sometimes we can focus our mind on a picture in our brain to help us feel calmer. Want to try one with me right now? Okay. First, if you're comfortable doing so, close your eyes. I want you to imagine you are a tree, strong, with roots firmly in the ground. There's something you have to do that's making you feel worried? Imagine those worries about whatever it is are the leaves on your tree. You gently shake your branches, and the leaves with all those things making you feel tight and anxious are let go. They fall slowly to the ground. Take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. Say quietly to yourself, I can do hard things. I can do it. Now, open your eyes. Hopefully you feel a bit more relaxed and ready to try, just like Squirrel E in the story. Stories in the Woods are original stories by me, Megan Schmitz. You can find me at Littles in the Woods on Instagram or Facebook for nature play ideas and tips for getting little explorers outside. Thanks for joining me. I can't wait to meet again for another story in the woods.